Good morning, everybody. My name is Nate. I'm the lead pastor at Restoration Church, and for the band and myself, we've been away since Wednesday, serving at youth convention, and our teenagers arrived on Thursday for youth convention. So we've been there the last few days. And before we jump into our message, I think it is important to just speak to a couple of things about youth convention, just so we can celebrate that as an entire church, and just to take a moment to acknowledge some things. So first, to Pastor Andrew and his team. It was cool because this is the first year where our youth group went to youth convention and met each other. So because we've had teenagers, we have a youth group in Plymouth, and they came, and we were one big, huge group. So we had 54 teenagers and youth leaders at the service. They were the largest group at youth convention, and they were amazing. It's not like just a bunch of rowdy people that they got, but they were at the front of the services, worshiping God, pursuing God, and just remarkable teenagers we have in our church, remarkable leaders. So thank you to all the leaders who are here today, the leaders in Plymouth who served all weekend, taking care of your kids, and it was amazing. It's powerful. And then the band who, Wednesday night, they show up for sound check and rehearse all night, and they're back at the church the next morning at 6 a.m., rehearsing and getting ready. They led 4 services in 3 days, giving it everything they've got, and every single one of the people that were on stage here in Dover served all weekend. Sharon and Nick, the team in Londonderry, all served all weekend, and none of them called out today. Here today at 6 in the morning, 7 in the morning, getting ready after just an absolutely exhausting weekend. That's why I forgot to turn on my microphone. I was walking around this morning and I felt like I was having an out-of-body experience. Like my consciousness and my body are not lining up, and it was just amazing, just amazing. And there's these moments that I can think of in my church, like these specific moments where I can look at something and say, all right, something changed. And there's different times. And so it's not every week, but something changed this weekend in our church. And could I put my finger on and define exactly what it is? No, probably not, but something changed. And it was just special to be a part of it, and I'm glad that I got to go. And if your teenager hasn't talked to you about it, man, ask them and really try to find out the why questions and ask some of the deep questions to find out what God did in their life, and that you can, and then celebrate that with them, even if you don't exactly understand it. We are in week 3 of our series, Masterpiece, and so I want to. We're just going to jump right into it. Now, I preached yesterday at youth convention, and I gave everything I got. And so I feel a little bit like, man, I don't know if I have anything left to give this morning, but my wife tells me I do. So we're going to go for it. And I just thank the Lord that I didn't lose my voice this year. So it was very good. This theme, we've been taking an art theme for our message to just give us something symbolic to help us to maybe understand family and use as an illustration for understanding. And in France, a couple years ago, they made possibly the greatest art discovery in the history of the world on accident. There was a French family. They owned, I assume, a beautiful, historic French home. And I had no idea the house. There's no picture of the house on the internet. But they had a leaky roof in their house. And so when they had to fix damage from the leaky roof. So when they went up in the attic, there was a closed off part of the attic that the roof was leaking behind. So when they opened up bear with me, everybody. My words will come. When they opened up that part of the attic, they found this painting in there, a 400-year-old painting, and it is estimated to be, its estimated value is $136 million, just hanging out in someone's attic for the last 400 years. And this is sealed off space, and can you even imagine this? Who was the person who put it in the attic to begin with, and why did they seal it off, and how could it have been forgotten about for all of these years? And think about the person who used to own the home, if they're still alive, like, what, that was in my attic? And like just really the absurdity about it. Having something that valuable and forgetting about it, having something that valuable and losing it, having something that valuable and not even knowing that you had it. We would love to discover something like that in our home. We would love to. And that's our dream, going through the attic and you find something, opening up a wall in a home and you discover something. We did a home renovation in 2008, and we took off the wall in the bathroom, and we discovered hundreds of razor blades, because that's where they used to dispose them in the 1950s. It's right in the wall. It's so clever. And nothing valuable. Just a bunch of rare diseases, I think, that we thought we eradicated. So we just love that. Like, man, I wish. What would I do if I had that? And we just, some of us, we don't throw anything away because we think like, oh, this could be valuable one day. People are going to want to buy these old newspaper flyers, so I better hold on to it. And as we get into our message, the idea behind this is that there is something valuable in your home. There is something for you to discover. There is something of extreme value. And if you search hard enough, you'll find it. This morning, I want to talk, I just want every single one of us to discover how valuable our families are. The most valuable possession you have, it's not your antique car, it's not your house, it's not some stop with some fancy watch that's been handed down over the generations. It is your family. Whether that's your spouse, your kids, it's your parents, that is the most valuable possession that you have. And I think, I wonder, have we forgotten the value of family? Now, family is extremely valuable to God, and I want to show you a couple of Bible verses that maybe you've never thought about it this way, but it'll help you to realize the importance that God's placed on the family. And you'll find these verses within the Ten Commandments. We think about the Ten Commandments as being of supreme importance and just the standard of the things that concern God. But there's two commandments out of the Ten Commandments that concern the family. And the first is in Exodus chapter 20, verse number 12. And so I'll let you open your Bibles to Exodus chapter 20 and just encourage you to look at this, maybe underline this, and allow God to speak to you through this. For those of you who aren't familiar with how the Ten Commandments originated, there was a man named Moses, and he's famous within Christianity and within Judaism, and God used him to bring the Israelites out of slavery from the nation of Egypt. And when they escaped and they were living in the wilderness, and God had promised them a promised land that was going to be all their own. It was part of the world that was going to be theirs forever. And they didn't there was all kinds of kind of different problems, but they ended up being a nomadic community for the next 40 years. They could never trust God enough to experience everything that he's given them. One of the things that he did in this miraculous moment is Moses went up on Mount Sinai, and the people were afraid because, at these different moments when Moses would go up there to pray, there'd be thunder and lightning. All these miraculous events would happen as Moses was talking with God. And one of the times when he came down, he brought down 2 stone tablets that had the 10 Commandments on it from God himself. Here are my priorities. Here are the things I want you to live by. And so the first that we're about to read, this is, we'll read it first. Exodus 20, verse number 12. And all the parents love this one, but it says, honor your father and mother. Then you will live a long, full life in the land the Lord is giving you. And this commandment regarding honoring our parents is meant to preserve the authority of parents in our life and in our family matters. It is a big deal for a teenager for you to honor your mom and dad. It is a big deal for children to honor their mom and dad. And it's a big deal even for an adult to understand what it is to honor your mom and dad. And that doesn't mean always obedience, because sometimes there are even ungodly parents who try to lead their kid into ungodly activities and even dangerous activities. And you have to learn and discover how to honor someone, even at the same time, maybe having to have boundaries between you and them because of their behavior and how they treat you. The second commandment is verse number 17. So if you scroll your finger down, look at verse number 17. God says, you must not covet your neighbor's house. You must not covet your neighbor's wife, male or female servant, ox or donkey, or anything else that belongs to your neighbor. And he says right here, do not covet your neighbor's wife. And this commandment, by God prohibiting adultery, he's establishing the sanctity of marriage, the importance of marriage, that it's protected and not misused. So why, though? Because I think we maybe understand that God gets it, it's important. We hear people talking about it. You hear people even arguing for it in political commentary, arguing for family, arguing against family. But for us, as people who follow Jesus, and even for you, if you're here and you don't follow Jesus, but as you listen to us, why is it important for us? Why do we value it? Why does God value it? One reason is because the family carries the message of God. And we know that this is the most important thing that we have, the message of God. So we have to protect it. We protect it doctrinally. We protect it by the way we live and the things we believe. And there's always things that try to twist it and always things that try to infiltrate it. And the family carries that message. In our family mission, your family mission as followers of Jesus is the same mission of God, to share the good news with people, to make disciples, to reach just one more. The same mission for our church is the same mission that your family carries, and the same mission your family should be on. The family is also an example of the church. So we're in a building, but we as individuals who follow Jesus, we are the church, and the church is global. The church can be found in every part of the world. And the family is an example of that. That within the family, you experience love and share love. You experience and offer forgiveness. You have hospitality for people who are outside of your family, and graciousness to people outside of your family. And you serve each other, and you serve those who are outside of your family. And that's what a local church does within their community and for their community. The family has value, and the family is important to God because the family is created to exist even for purposes outside of itself. God didn't establish a family just for the benefit of the family. He established a family for the benefit of the world. And within that relationship, as you disciple your kids, as you even disciple your adult children, they're able to develop a heart and understanding of God. It sometimes makes it so easy for them. At youth convention on Friday night, Michelle and our kids, they were there the whole time with me. And maybe 9:30 or 10 o'clock Friday night, people are praying, adults are praying for teenagers are praying for each other, and it kind of settled down near the end. And my 5-year-old, he was crying. And so, like, is he overtired? Did someone step on his toe? Like, what's going on with him? So, you know, I knelt down next to him and I said, "Hey, buddy, why are you crying?" And he wiped his eyes and he got close to me and I couldn't hear what he said. So I sat down on the chair and I said, and he was right in my face. I said, "Why are you crying?" And he said, "I feel bad about all the bad things I did when I was 3, 4, and 5. And it's amazing that we can look at and see that conviction is a bad thing, but conviction is a beautiful thing. So even as a 5-year-old, something in his heart said, "Hey, the things that I was doing was wrong." And so I had a moment at that time as a dad to show him about my Heavenly Father. And I said, "Buddy, if you ask God to forgive you, you don't have to feel bad about that anymore." So I let him, prayer, "God, forgive me for all the bad things I did when I was 3, 4, and 5. And I could have been specific, but I left it generalized. And he wiped the tears from his eyes, and he was still a little somber, but I said, "You don't have to feel bad anymore. God's forgiven you, and God doesn't remember it." And so this morning, he started a new list. You don't have to feel bad anymore. And that relationship between me and him is an example of the relationship between God and me. It's an example of the relationship between God and you. And that is something that every single one of us have the opportunity to experience within family, and then we have the opportunity to share and to show people how great he is. And when your kid needs to ask you for forgiveness because they crashed your car or they stole money from you or they've done something absolutely terrible, the way you respond to them is an example of the way Jesus responds to us. So that valuable treasure, that great possession, that great, valuable, rich possession that we have, as you look at your life, I mean, even if we look in our culture and our country, has it been lost in an attic somewhere? You don't even see it. You've never experienced it. You don't even know that it exists. Like, you look at your house this week and you're like, "Hey, there's no treasure there." You look at your history, your family history, and you're like, "That is not something that I would ever want. That belongs in waste management. That doesn't belong. That is not a treasure." And it's true. Because God values family so much, the enemy works very hard to destroy family. Not just the idea of family, but he works very hard to destroy your family. He wants to bring a division between you and your spouse. He wants to bring a division between you and your children. He wants to bring a division between your children and each other. He's working hard to separate it, divide it, ruin it. even cause people to despise it. It even cause people to think that it's old-fashioned and not worth anything. When we see in our culture a big shift, as of right now, the single population, and nothing against singles, and God calls people to be single, and so don't ever feel like you're less or you don't have something valuable. Don't ever feel that way. But if you're someone who says family's not valuable, marriage isn't valuable, then I want you to rethink what you're missing and what you're giving up. 50% of the population right now is single, compared with 37% of the population in 1976. And they're single not because they're single primarily because they don't want marriage. It just, they saw the pain that it caused their parents. They see the pain and divorce everywhere, and they're like, I don't want that. They want relationship. They want love. They want, they want to have children, but they don't want marriage and commitment and a family as God has designed it. In 1960, the percentage of children who lived with both of their parents was 88%. And 2 years ago, that percentage dropped to 69%. That can seem like, obviously that's a decrease. It can seem like, I guess that's not so bad. But that includes the 3 million children who are living with parents who are unmarried. So they're establishing a household without putting that under the umbrella of marriage. You have to look at that and say, well, has this valuable piece of artwork that God has for us and that could be in our possession, has it been lost or even deliberately thrown away? One of the things that's happening, one of the statistics from Pew Research Center is that adults who are age 50 and older, their divorce rate is double what it was in 1990. So in the last what is that, 25 years, 28 years, it has doubled divorce rate, people age 50 and older. So you've been married for however many years. The divorce rate for those age 65 and older has tripled in that same time span. There's something valuable. There's something special that should be gained over a length of time. And really, your marriage and your family should increase in value over time. But what we're seeing is people being more willing than ever to give it up and walk away and start all over, even in their 70s, even in their 80s. And you can search and you can find stories of people even older than that getting divorced. You have these valuable treasures that are lost or forgotten about. You have these valuable treasures that have been thrown away. And then you have these valuable treasures that are being misused. And I always try to talk about these things delicately, but it is important that we talk about it because God offers us something greater, something more valuable than what the world offers us and what and maybe what we think we could experience. So imagine they went in the attic, they found that painting, and they're like, wow, this is an amazing painting. And they brought it downstairs in their house and they turned it into a Pinterest project. Like, I'm gonna just cut up this face, and I'm gonna sew it onto this pillow, and I'm gonna use this part for a card table for my children, and I'm gonna spray paint a pogo stick gold over here on top of this, and we just we're just misusing it. So it's valuable, huge value, and we're using it like, oh man, this is gonna be so good for these other things. And again, so the lights are in my eyes. I don't know who you are. I don't know who's in the room. I'm not trying to pick on anybody or make everybody look at each other. But if you're living together, you're in a relationship, or you're living together and you're not married, you're misusing something that's valuable. And this statistic is not from Christians, but people who lived together before marriage saw a 33% higher divorce rate than those who waited to live together until after they're married. So if you start living together before you're married, you're divorced. 1 in 3 people is going to get divorced at a higher rate. I mean, that's an alarming rate if you start putting all those numbers together. And the reason that happens is because you're treating something valuable as ordinary. So if you see something valuable as ordinary, I mean, you're going to misuse it all the time. You're not going to protect it. That $136 million piece of art, it shouldn't be in an attic. It shouldn't be used for any other purpose. I mean, that thing should be framed and protected and enjoyed. Martin Luther King Jr., in a speech in 1955, he talked about family and the value of family, and I want to read that quote to you. He said, "One of the main things that brought Rome to the junk heap of destruction was not the opposition of the enemy without the gate, but the disintegration of the family life within the homes. Home life in Rome frequently descended into orgies of sexuality and license in which the true value perished. If we aren't careful, the same thing will happen in America. And our nation will sink to the level of a third or fourth rate power in world affairs. The relentless lesson of history cannot be escaped, and that is when the family structure begins to break down, the structure of the nation itself begins to crack and crumble." There is extreme value when your family disintegrates. It affects a nation. And when your family is valuable and it is a possession you protect, it affects a nation. Sometimes we don't realize what we have until we've lost it. So you had something valuable and you didn't take care of it, and now all of a sudden, it's like that $40,000 car. You can't. It's worth $500 now. You're like, I should have taken care of it. You think about all those old video games and video game systems you traded in for pennies on the dollar, and you're like, they're worth so much now. I would give anything to have those back. You think about all those relationships that you've lost. And we don't realize how valuable it is. So what I want you to do, you're here. Again, you may feel bad about bad things that have happened in your life. And I don't want you to feel that way. But I just want to encourage you. They discovered that value. Those French homeowners, they discovered that valuable piece of art in their in their attic because they were investigating and they went to fix a leaky roof. So I want to invite you. It's like, what are you going to do with this? I want to invite you to fix the leaky roofs in your family. So I wrote some down that I thought are common but not often talked about. And I think that if you will investigate these leaky roofs, if you will work to fix these leaky roofs, you're going to discover something valuable in the process. So the first is complacency. I think I think that's why the divorce rate is increasing in couples that are age 50 and older and couples that are age 65 and older, because they've been together so long, they're now complacent in that relationship. Proverbs chapter 5 verse 18 says, "Let your wife be a fountain of blessing for you. Rejoice in the wife of your youth." if you're rejoicing in the wife of your youth, I mean, you're not complacent. It says rejoice. What exactly does that mean? It says be glad. Be glad and excited about the wife of your youth. It's not something, that relationship is not something to be stuck in the attic and forgotten about, where you're now both living under the same roof and you're kind of business partners now. But it's something to be framed. It's something for your children and your grandchildren and your great-grandchildren to look at and say, man, I want that. That's rare. That's not common. And I want that. And when they're able to see that in you and they're able to, see that in their parents, then they're able to believe that for themselves. I encourage you to stare at each other across the room again. And maybe you begin to take a deep breath when they walk into the room, or when you see them even just doing chores. Take a deep breath, hold it and exhale, and just, man, I thank you for a good man, God. I thank you for a good woman, God, who's put up with me, who's dealt with me, who hasn't left me. Don't be complacent. Don't tuck things away. Fix the leaky roof of irritability or impatience. 1 Peter 5:8 says, most importantly of all, continue to show deep love for each other, for love covers a multitude of sins. And that's a verse we share often and we read often in our church because it is so true. We begin nitpicking each other and complaining about each other, and we begin to feel, honestly, feeling selfish and feeling neglected and being bothered and being bitter and holding on to these things. But if we could love each other, just really trusting God to take care of those things. I'm going to love you no matter what. I'm going to love you through physical illness. I'm going to love you through mental illness. I'm going to love you through poverty. I'm going to love you through success. I'm going to love you when the baby's up at 2 a.m. I'm going to love you when they're teenagers. I'm going to love you when they leave. And all these other things, all these other stupid things, laundry and dishes and chores and bills, all those other things. They're stupid compared to how valuable we could have, how valuable the big picture is, and how valuable that marriage and that family could be. Some of you parents, you have a kid, you butt heads with them. And that relationship's being destroyed because you're just butting heads with them all the time. And you talk quick to them, you talk angry to them. They're like, Dad, 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 Dad. And you're not listening to them. And so they keep asking. And you're like, what do you want? Listen, have love and compassion. Have a gentleness. Another leaky roof, unhealthy communication. And I spoke to that obviously just a second ago, but Colossians 4 verse 6 says, let your speech always be gracious, seasoned with salt, so that you may know how you ought to answer each person. It's gracious, it's learning. I mean, it's skills to learn. It's very important. I'm not going to let a leaky roof of unhealthy communication to sabotage and destroy something valuable. That leaky roof dripping on a $136 million piece of art. I'm not going to allow that to happen. I'm not going to name call. I'm not going to roll my eyes. And when those moments I do those things. So we talked about the first week, I'm going to be quick to repent, quick to confess of the things that I've done wrong. Don't let unhealthy communication destroy your most valuable possession. And then lastly, unhealthy actions. Ephesians 6 verse 4, fathers, do not provoke your children to anger by the way you treat them. Rather, bring them up with the discipline and instruction that comes from the Lord. I think the majority of dads like to annoy their children. It's teasing, it's having fun, but it crosses the line way too much. And we poke them and tease them till they lose their temper, and then we punish them for losing their temper. We're angry at them. We're ignoring them, and they're really, oftentimes in young kids, even in teenagers, their misbehavior is a cry for attention. And they'll never admit that. They can't even quantify that. They can't even verbalize that. But the only attention you're giving them is when they do bad things. The only time you're talking to them is to talk to them about an F. The only time they're getting time with you is, the only time you're chasing them is when they're chasing this guy they should never be dating with. They're hanging out with people. So they begin to do those things because even bad attention from you is better than no attention from you. And if you could begin to have healthy actions toward them, physical touch. We have all boys, but as I read and study family, one of the things that happens in young girls is as they develop, their dads are then afraid to interact with them and hug them and kiss them and hold them. And they're 9 years old, they're 10 years old, they're 14 years old, and they don't know why all of a sudden now you're not with them anymore. You're not affectionate to them, and something in their heart breaks, and they don't know what it is, but they just feel a loss of worth. And so healthy actions, physical touch, communicating, even how you punish them. And we're not perfect, and I'm not perfect. And that's why repentance is such a huge deal, because we don't cover up our mistakes. We don't have this leaky roof where we just seal off that part of the attic and pretend like, oh, it's just always going to leak over there. If your family's falling apart, if you've got a $136 million piece of artwork and it's falling apart, you do everything you can to preserve that. You fight for that. You put money into that. You put time into that. You get the help of experts. I've got this $136 million painting, and it's like the paint's peeling off. If the paint peels off, the canvas disintegrates, I've got nothing. There's nothing left. It's worth nothing at that point. And so you're going to every expert you can, getting help from every single person you can. And you're not at that point like concerned about like, oh, I'm going to be embarrassed that I've got this picture and I let it get to this shape. Like I got to keep pretending this picture's perfect. You would never do that. So your most valuable possession, get all the help you can, whenever you can, from whoever you can. Like, get help, pursue God, pray, get on your knees and fast. Like, beg God, I need your help. Don't give up on that. Don't walk away from that. Because, like any piece of art, the longer it exists, the more valuable it becomes. Don't walk away from it. Don't give up to it. May it be an heirloom that you pass down to the next generation. And if you'll do that, God will help you. if you'll surrender your heart, not your spouse's heart, not your kid's heart, if you'll surrender your heart to Jesus. That's all, you can restore that. God could do a miracle. God can do a miracle. If you bow your heads, I want to pray. Jesus, we need you. We need you. Just the everyday leaking roof in our house, in our family, seems like it's a flood in our house. Like there's no way, there's nothing we could ever do to stop it. It seems like the roof has leaked for so long. There's mold damage and plaster damage and wood damage, and we feel like, you know what, this place needs to be condemned. This family needs to be condemned, and we just need to tear it down and start all over again, or you know, we just think like there's no hope. But you, Jesus, in the power of your words, you're able to speak and create a universe. And in one moment, Jesus, you can change our heart. In one moment, Jesus, you can convict a 5-year-old. In one moment, Jesus, you can change a teenager. In one moment, Jesus, you can change a belligerent spouse. In one moment, Jesus, you can give us the grace to make it through another day. In one moment, Jesus, you can do a miracle. I pray for every family, every marriage, every person. They'll pursue you. They'll pursue your ways. And they'll believe that what you have and what you offer is better than anything the world has and the world offers. We give our lives to you, Jesus. We pray this in your name. Just keep your eyes closed, and I want you to reflect and think about what could be. Get a dream for your family. Begin to realize how valuable what you have is, and begin to thank God for it.